You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 1st of January 2026 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London on New Year's Day. Happy 2026. It's me, Tom Edwards, in the chair today. Coming up on the programme, we're bringing you another special interview, this time from the world of aviation. Since taking up leadership of Air France-KLM in 2018, Ben Smith has brought stability and modernisation to the company. Through major investments in next-gen aircraft and steadying labour relations, Ben has been responsible for steering the group back to profitability post-pandemic. Ben Smith is CEO of Air France-KLM. He joined Monocle's editorial director, Tyler Brûlé, in Studio 5 on Rue Bechemont in Paris to discuss how he restored profitability and improved efficiency and sustainability at the company.
Ben, wonderful having you here in Studio 5 in Paris. I wanted to start maybe just how do you do it? Because I've had even your competitors asking me, how does Air France sort of manage to, and let's talk about the crew, let's talk about the staff. How is everyone on brand, right shoes, right hair, right nail color, right lipstick, no nail polish on the men? You've really sort of kept it in a lane where, you go on all kinds of other carriers, it's an absolute free-for-all. And it's a huge struggle. And of course, listen, you're not immune to it. You're an airline that's had labor problems. And this is France, let's face it. What is it? What is it in the DNA that you are able to keep, especially on the staff side, so tight that everybody is on point?
It's not only our customers that are proud, it's the employees. I mean, France. France and service, a particular type of service. It's not for everyone, but there's a level of professionalism in most industries where good service is not too close, not too far. You go to the US,
way too close.
And then you go to some other countries, it's a little cold or it's a little mechanical, whereas it's very natural, I find, for many of our employees to be on brand, if I could use that term, with a French way of offering service. I mean, we're lucky that Made in France sells. This is not made in, we'll mention a few countries, but not as easy. But Made in France sells. And 98% of our cabin crew are French. Now, some come from regions of France where they may not be exposed to some of the cultures of the people we fly, but they quickly are able to adapt because that is where they come from, be it in a cafe or a restaurant or a department store. Good service is a level of professionalism that has disappeared from many of our competitors. So we leverage that. I love it. We can be legitimate when it comes to gastronomie. We can be legitimate when it comes to luxury, and we can be legitimate when it comes to fashion. And these are three elements that have history with the glamour of aviation. And then we have something which very few airlines don't have, and that is we're legitimate as well as in the fact that Air France had a very close affiliation with technology. So the three big French aviation manufacturers of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s had an unbelievable affiliation with Air France. So Aéropostale, or I never say it right, Aérospatiale. They were one of the two companies that were behind the Concorde. Then you had the Caravelle. Then you can go back. You had the Mercure. You have a whole bunch of airplanes that were part of the Air France fleet that formed a part of the technological advance that Air France had. So if you say, okay, I had luxury, you have gastronomie, you've got fashion, you have technology, you have the destination of France, you've got all the key pieces, you've got the pride of the country, you have a level of professionalism on board, you got a lot to work with.
And on that, this is interesting because, on one side, as you said, people will often vote around patriotic stripes. They want to fly with their national brand. It feels comfortable to them. But you also talk, and if we think about that customer as well, when it comes to, let's say, luxury, they may not want to purchase a handbag which is made in their country. They're going to probably gravitate towards France or maybe Italy as well. But let's use the French example. Do you have an advantage too? When you think about maybe that customer who's sitting in Los Angeles, you think about that customer who is sitting in Tokyo or Singapore, that this aspiration as well, that if they think about the world, of course, of pret-a-porter, they think of great ready-to-wear, they also think, oh, actually, maybe this airline is also aspirational as well. Can you play that card? Are you playing that card?
Yes, for sure. in my experience, because I haven't spent my whole career here, is in most situations, global carriers, you have a disproportionate number of your customers that are point of sale your home country. As you said, you're more attractive to a customer base that's based in the country where the airline is based. With Air France, we have a few countries where we have the opposite. We're so attractive in some very lucrative countries that bring a lot of revenue to us because they want to start their French experience from the moment they get on board. So we're able to take advantage of that.
Earlier this year, you launched your new La Première product, your first class product, which is on one side an evolution, on one side a revolution, and probably also standing out in a way very different from the pack. And of course, we've covered it, certainly to some extent, in Monocle as well. You've gone for a much softer approach. You've built on what you had before. It is not a world of being boxed in. It's not a lot of hard surfaces. You're not putting people in a room within a fuselage. It's very unique. And I'm wondering, how's it going? Because, you fly all the Middle East carriers. It's all about a door and a high wall around you. And some of your competitors are doing the same thing as well. And it's good, unless you have that in business class on your aircraft. But what's the response been so far to the launch of the new cabin? Because it is very different from everybody else.
It's been fantastic. It's been much better than any of our expectations. Super happy. We're going to expand the footprint by 50%. We're adding more airplanes to the aircraft that are equipped with La Première. And we keep adding to the amenities that our customers are asking for. So the basic objective, we look at Air France. We want Air France to be positioned by far as the number one airline in Europe. And that usually then carries through Africa, North America, and South America. We believe we can give the Gulf carriers a good run for their money, but we view the Gulf carriers not as companies, but as countries. So can Air France compete against a country? I guess it depends what the country wants. And then in Asia, we don't have the same work rules. So there are 2 or 3 in Asia that are a bit of a challenge. But I think we went from number 26 in the world. We're now number 8. Can we make it into the top 5? Perhaps. But we by far want to be number 1 in Europe in every cabin. And I think we can get there. So with the La Première, what were we looking for? I mean, there's various types of customers. People traveling for business, people traveling for leisure, people who want a special experience, people who are switching from a private jet onto a commercial airplane, either for cost reasons, for environmental reasons, for optical reasons. So I'd say that one of the inspirations around the new product was how could we make the experience as close to a private jet feel as possible from the moment you walk in the terminal to when you get off the plane, you exit the terminal. So it's not just on board. We have our separate check-in facility at CDG, which is better than any other FBO in all of France. How private it is, the restaurant offering that we've got, the spa offering we have, the suites that we have. FBOs are pretty Spartan. This is a great FBO on its own. And everything else, you're totally apart from the general customer experience. You have your security, you have your police control. And then when you're on board, we don't have 8 seats. We don't have 14 seats like some of our competitors. We have 4.
You don't have 3 either, thankfully.
No, we don't have 3.5. We have 4 like we've had in the past. So the ratio of cabin crew to customers is extremely high. The ratio of toilets to customers is extremely high. And the food offering is the best. We think that with our brand and all those elements that I mentioned, you talk about boxing in, we want it to be a soft feel, but private. We introduced the first generation of curtains around La Première 10 years ago. The feedback from our customers, fantastic. So the only challenge we had around the curtains was, can you make the curtains more soundproof? So we've done that. It's a little bit more of a cocoon type feel, but it's very soft. And we've elongated the seats, so you've got about 17% more space than the previous generation. And this is customer driven. Yes, we have great ideas, but it's the customer that needs to pay. It's the customer that needs to enjoy it. So all the improvements and evolution are coming from customer suggestions, things the customers didn't like from the past. And I think we're exceeding what the customers are looking for. And of course, we want new customers. And our number one way of attracting new customers is word of mouth with this product.
Now, you said 50% uptick in terms of expansion of this product, but let's rewind a few years ago and when you were at another carrier, and that carrier never had F, but there was just first class had gone out of fashion and we saw this creep, long-haul business class was getting better, etc. But you're firmly committed to it. I'm wondering why, and is first class a fashion? Because as we know, 50%. If you said, oh, we're going to look at it, this is significant because this is proper hardware you have to put on these aircraft. It doesn't matter how soft it is, it's still hardware. What gives you the faith and the belief in the F product and the demand?
Well, it's not an easy product to put out. It is very expensive, both on the ground, in the air, the amount of real estate it takes up. When I arrived here at Air France-KLM in 2018, we were losing a ton of money with La Première, and there were a lot of people that wanted to pull it. And one of the reasons is business class was getting so much better, so it was more difficult for our customers to justify paying a premium when what business class was offering was excellent. If you look, the U.S. carriers have had a really tough time maintaining the level of service that customers expect, so now all of them have pulled it. So we have no competition by U.S. carriers across the Atlantic in terms of first class. And we said, okay, well, if we're going to continue this, we've got to modernize this. We have to keep moving forward. But if we're going to do it, it has to be a wow. And what is a wow? And this is, some of the elements that I just mentioned, which takes a long time to get certified, to design in our business. So it was a 5-year project, customer-driven. Obviously, the innovations came from inside. And profit. Profit was an absolute must. We're not going to invest this massive amount to have a halo effect on our brand. And talking to our customers, talking to sales, talking to marketing, we had a pretty comfortable sense that we can turn this thing around and be profitable. And this, as you say, what are our expectations feeling? This has far exceeded anything we could ever imagine. And the return business that we're getting, the repeat business we're getting, it's very difficult for a customer to choose a La Première seat, to experience that, to say, yes, it was expensive, but I'm going to sit in business. You're one of those customers. It's not.
Don't tell anyone.
It's not going to happen. And that is a huge plus for us. And they're satisfied.
You talk about 50%. So if we can break news, you've got your comms team sitting around us here in the studio. Where are you heading? What new routes? Because last time we talked, of course, you have the existing long-haul routes, of course. Obviously, JFK, CDG, very important. I imagine Los Angeles, very important. But you talked then about, I've been not complaining. I've been asking for Hong Kong. But what's coming up? With 50%, you're not just adding more capacity only to JFK, I would imagine. I'm sure that's interesting. But elsewhere, where are you going?
Well, prior to our decision to expand the fleet that are equipped with La Première cabin, the U.S. was our number one market. So we had how many destinations? New York, JFK, Washington, Miami, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. So we've just announced over the last few days that we're going to add Boston and Houston in the U.S. as well as Atlanta. And Atlanta is the home base of our joint venture partner, Delta. Now, Atlanta itself is on a big La Première market. However, we have a lot of customers from other cities within the U.S. that don't have nonstops to Europe. So it's, we'll have La Première customers connecting over Atlanta. And this, when we look at the business case, I think this will be a winner route. And we're very strong to Israel. So we've added a flight to Tel Aviv with a 777 with La Première. We're going to add more service to Asia. We're deciding which ones we're going to go.
Hong Kong.
It's on the list. And we're going to do some more in the U.S. And perhaps we'll see how Tel Aviv goes, maybe 1 or 2 more in the Middle East. But, if you look at the major GDP cities of our long-haul network, you can pick the next 5 or 10. It's not going to be any surprise in the ones we're going to announce.
Interesting. We were just touching on Middle East. Is there room, as you said, in a way, Emirates, they are the flag carrier almost for the region, and that region is India, et cetera. They are that long-haul carrier. They represent a nation. Is there room for an Etihad in the future and a Qatar? And I've just seen Gulf Air bought more long-haul planes as well. Do you see consolidation or pride and money that everyone's going to have their own carrier out there?
I don't see any consolidation on the horizon in the Gulf. If anything, I see some additional carriers coming up. We see Riyadh Air has big expansion plans. We've got Saudia.
Because everyone wants to fly in a dry airline. I said it, not you. But anyway.
So I don't see consolidation there. But what is great is, having those powerful Gulf carriers or state-supported carriers in the middle of the airways between Europe and Southeast Asia have been really tough for us. So I find aircraft the size of the Airbus A350 or 777s with La Première are really unique offerings for us that we can overfly the Middle East. So if your option is Paris, Dubai to Bangkok, if you've got a nonstop Paris to Bangkok, most customers would prefer to fly nonstop. So can we charge a premium in order to entice enough people to come on the nonstop? And we're finding to the big cities that we can. Bangkok was not profitable in 2018. It is profitable now. So we can find a way on the biggest, most important routes. But there are many. We can't fly to 20 destinations on the Indian subcontinent, but we can fly to 3 or 4 or 5.
This has been an interesting year in aviation. But one of the key points, I just came back from a flight to Asia and I was watching, as we do, we like to look at flight radar. And it's amazing seeing all of these Chinese aircraft flying over Russia, having a bit of a fast track into Europe. What's going to be done about this? Is this a conversation right now with Brussels, with other authorities, with our partners and allies to sort this out? Because this is really not a level playing field.
We use exactly the word that we use constantly in Brussels and also in Paris. And my counterpart in Frankfurt does the same thing with Germany. Level playing field, not only overflight rights, but also with taxes, with mandates for fuels like SAF, and for ETS charges. So we are advocating European-based carriers to have a total level playing field. But when it comes to not being able to fly over Russia, yes, we have customers that we've lost because of our inability to do that. But for the most part, our best customers are staying with us. They're happy with our service. One way you actually lose maybe 30 minutes, but the other, yes, you lose some time. But the flights are overnight, both directions. So it doesn't seem to be that impactful. What is impactful is the cost of operating. So the fuel and the extra air crew costs because they're flying more. That's what the big impact is on us.
I'm just curious, so is the message getting through? Does anyone in Brussels, in Geneva, in Montreal, where aviation authorities sit and legislation sit, is anyone listening?
Yeah, they're listening, but it's not an easy thing to solve. It's not just aviation that is involved where you don't have a level playing field. So to solve this, as a one-off industry, not easy at all. You have Mr. Trump who has his own ways of doing things, but, you have Brussels who wants to do things from a very straightforward diplomatic perspective. So, no, we're not expecting any solution to a level playing field on overflight rights in the near future.
We're moving into 2026 right now, kicking off a new year. Various things at play. And I'm wondering, we've had a few years of hysteria around, of course, just aviation in general. My view is it's calmed down. I don't feel there's as many people protesting outside of airports over environmental issues, etc. It's been a little bit complicated that we've seen at one of your hubs, obviously, in Amsterdam. But just Ben Smith's take on the state of the industry right now. How do you feel about just, of course, being one of the most important carriers in the world, of course, clearly one of the most important carriers in Europe? What's your take on things? Your crystal ball, maybe?
Well, travel is still very much in demand all over the world, which is great for our industry. In particular in Asia, especially Southeast Asia, booming in India, it's booming in China. US showing a healthy demand and even growth. Europe in some regions, we're also seeing growth. Amsterdam is more so around noise. You've got the Schiphol Airport, which is quite central, and there's a big pressure by residents who live around Schiphol for noise reduction. Now, new aircraft, latest technology aircraft, emit 50% less sound or less noise than previous generations. So our objective is to refleet as quickly as possible. Politicians who have a hard time, managing that message to their constituents, but we are getting somewhere with the local politicians in Amsterdam where I think we can find something that is balanced. But it's not easy. These people have to get elected. They have to make promises that are not always that easy to meet, and we still have to run a business. But in the Netherlands and in Amsterdam, it's probably the most difficult jurisdiction right now to operate a commercial airline.
I'm curious because this goes back to level playing fields, but also whether we as Europeans want to be in business in general, because you have 24-hour hubs elsewhere in the world. And some of them, of course, as we know, they're 24 hours because of just the geography. But I would also imagine as well that it would be nice to have 24-hour hubs in Europe because you could also make things work in a very different way. What type of lobbying, what type of narrative has to come out for us to understand that we have the players in the Middle East? Of course, we have U.S. carriers that are, I would say, largely only concerned with their domestic market. But what are the forces that have to happen for people to realize that aviation is important to make business happen and to make the world go round?
Tyler, you've been following our industry for many years. It's Amsterdam, it's Schiphol, it's KLM, it's the Dutch state that realized 50 years ago the benefits and the importance of a global hub in aviation. And that for a country and a city the size of Amsterdam, if it wanted to be competitive globally, it needed air links. So it needed a transportation infrastructure that was superior to any country around it. And KLM and Schiphol developed a hub, which was number 3 or number 4 in Europe, where Amsterdam, in terms of size, probably number 10 or 12. And with this, Amsterdam's been able to maintain connections to destinations throughout the world, 200 destinations. And the whole international hub structure was designed and thought through in Amsterdam. So this is where it started. Then you saw many other cities and countries around the world that say, look, in order for us to develop and to have something that helps attract businesses to be based here, high net worth or very well skilled employees, visitors, tourists, we need to have links. And without that, it's expected that it's going to be more difficult to compete. So you see in Singapore, which totally liberalized their bilateral agreements. And then you saw Dubai, I would say, look, we'd like to develop a city in the middle of the Gulf region, a financial center, tourist center. And there were a lot of things they needed. They had to become a little more friendly to Western ways of doing things. They had to relax their financial rules. And at the same time, they had to make sure that the city was accessible from anywhere in the world. And because Dubai at the time in 1985, when Emirates was founded, had limited air links, where did they look for inspiration? Amsterdam. And they've done exactly that. However, the region around Dubai, the catchment area, is enormous. You have over 1 billion inhabitants on the Indian subcontinent, and you had no airlines that were of quality around there. So Emirates has become the de facto national carrier for about 7 countries. So in Europe, I think many countries in Europe take for granted the value of a global airline that is connected to all the major cities, are not aware of the competition we're up against. On the other side of the Atlantic, we have the US, which has an enormous domestic market, which we do not have here in Europe. So European-based long-haul legacy carriers are really in a difficult spot when we have Gulf carriers who are supported by their states. We have the US carriers, long-haul carriers, which have a huge domestic market. And our intra-Europe market is dominated by low-cost carriers, which is what the market demands. So it's very difficult for carriers like ourselves to compete on a level playing field. And then the things you just mentioned, we've got taxes, we've got charges, we have restrictions on where we can fly that add on top of it. So our job here, it's a real challenge. But we have a great base. In terms of size, we are number 6 or 7 in the world, over 200 airlines. So we have a great base to start from, but we have a lot of work to do.
I want to come back to the Gulf in a moment, but here we are sitting in Paris. Let's talk about Hub Charles de Gaulle, CDG, and maybe not the challenges, but maybe a little bit also the opportunities, because, we know it can be a bit of a beast of an airport to transfer through, etc. Of course, if you're flying at the right end of the aircraft, you make it very easy as well. But how do you see Paris? How do you see Paris evolving? We've got, let's say, rail link, hopefully, that will get us from the airport a little bit snappier into town quite soon, I believe. But yeah, when you look at Paris, and it's a very different setup that you have versus Amsterdam, but what is sort of the mood and the feeling? And maybe, again, we come back to sort of city and state commitment to having a gateway to the world.
So first thing we have, which is unique, is Paris, France, is the number 1 inbound tourism market in the world. So, I was surprised when I arrived here in 2018. I just assumed it was the US. But number 1, over 100 million inbound tourists or visitors. So we have a great base. And then you've also, it's one of the top economies in the world as well. So you have a business base, you have a tourism base. And Air France did not have a majority position here. Now, some of the flows we cannot be competitive on because of our cost structure, but many of the flows we can be. So we made a lot of headway in repositioning the carrier to go after the flows where we can be competitive.
When you talk about flows, give us an example for a listener who may not be sort of used to these terms. What would that be? How would that look?
So the requirement and the benefit of having connection traffic like a hub is not as important in Paris when you have a local market. If you're, as an example, our other big brand within the group, KLM, because the market is small, the only way we can justify, let's say, a flight to Santiago, we may only be able to support 1 or 2 flights a week with the local traffic, but with all the connections we offer, we can put a daily flight in year-round. Whereas in Paris, that could probably support itself without any connections. Now, is it a type of traffic that'll, pay enough to support the flight? Is there enough business customers, enough first-class customers, enough economy? That mix of customer, having a hub in Paris helps with that. So, you mentioned the setup of the terminal structures at CDG. So Amsterdam was built, as I said, Schiphol, 60 years ago. So we want a hub, 1 terminal, much easier to connect through, was designed for connections. whereas CDG was not designed as a hub. So we've got 7 different buildings at CDG, all with different numbers that don't make sense. I mean, you can come into Terminal 2 and it's 2E, Concourse K, Gate 37. So very confusing. And if you're making a connection, not easy. A lot of buses go between different buildings. And the original master plan for CDG was not for a hub. Then in the mid-90s, the decision was made by some of my predecessors to create a hub. And so when you're trying to create a hub with an infrastructure that is not designed for that, big challenge. So we have this makeshift structure of terminals, which is not ideal for connections. So Air France carries about 45 to 50% of its customers are on connection basis, whereas an example, Qatar would be at 85, 90. So this is not the bulk of our business. So we are working with the local airport authority, Aéroport de Paris, to improve the ability to make connections at CDG. But simultaneously, we want by far Air France to be the number one choice for business class, for La Première first class customers, starting or ending their trip in Paris. This is very profitable business for us. And I'll just go back to the one point that you mentioned with your question. In most cases, a local customer is more valuable and more profitable than a connection customer. Not always, but a connection customer, you've got 2 takeoffs, 2 landings, you have the infrastructure that you have to deal with in between, where a local customer, the costs that are associated with that trip are lower. So if you can fill the airplane with local, in most cases, 9 times out of 10, you want that local customer.
And let's talk about that local customer. Are they quite loyal? Because, again, you have oftentimes to connect. If someone gets pulled through Madrid or they get pulled through Frankfurt, etc., of course, there's incentives to do that by your competitors. Of course, you do the same as well. But are the French pretty loyal to the tricolore on the tail?
Yes. I think there's a natural closeness to many national flag carriers. People are very patriotic in most countries. And when you have a national flag carrier, you have a tendency to have, I'd say, a certain preference. In the United States, unfortunately, the 2 flag carriers that existed, Pan American and Trans World Airlines, they've disappeared. So the airlines that are left to fly internationally, they're basically, mass transit, big domestic markets, and the brand importance is more focused on a loyalty program as opposed to the brand they're flying internationally. A lot of people are more comfortable on a U.S. carrier where you're guaranteed the service to be in English. But, if someone's going to Italy or to Japan or to France, they don't have that same aversion or fear of flying on a carrier where the main language might be different. Whereas in France, there is an unbelievable support and level of pride for Air France that I've never seen with an airline. And I've been in this business 35 years. I have never seen this. So we have something here you can't buy. You've got a level of pride, not just only with our customer base, but also with our employees. So how do we bring the value of that out in our brand and every touch point that we have? And if you've been following us and the customers that we have, we're building more and more loyalty to our brand with that pride that, is already there. You don't have to go out and advertise and, be proud of Air France. They already are. And we've already got a good support. So I would say we have more loyalty to our brand because of the closeness and affinity of the, as you said, the tricolore, the French flag on the tail of the airplane. So it's a huge asset for us.
I just want to wrap up with a couple of rapid fire questions. But just before that, is there an aircraft you're missing? When you think about your partners at Boeing, at Airbus, at Embraer as well, is there an aircraft you wish you had in the fleet but is not on offer right now? You think, goodness, like you're lobbying for something. What's missing? Some people are thrilled that there's an A321 XLR. Some people don't care about it. Is there a dream aircraft that you need?
No, I think we're good with the aircraft we need, but there are some that would enhance our fleet. I would love to see a Airbus A220 stretch. We'd love to see a 777X flying and certified.
Exactly. It's taking a while. Yes.
It's taking a while, but Air France was the launch customer for the 777-300ER, so we know the airplane inside out. We overhaul it. We have a GE partnership in CDG to maintain the GE90 engine, so we've got everything in place to operate that plane in a more efficient, optimized way than any of our competitors. So the 777-9X is a big interest. It's very expensive, but it could be
You've ordered them?
We haven't ordered them, but we have to decide on our replacement of our 777-300ERs before the end of the decade. We could do it at any time, but if you have the A350-1000 or now there's 2000 they're talking about, which would be potential other choices, but those are the two.
And of course, your colleagues, everybody who walks into our lounge around the corner Thank you very much for the lovely Concorde model. Do you believe in supersonic? Is there room? It's, as you said, it's such a part of the French. I mean, it's an Anglo-French story. It's amazing to think that we're in an era where there's no supersonic commercial travel anymore, and it was part of your story. Would it be interesting? Obviously, we know that there's aircraft in development.
For sure. I mean, there's a market for faster travel. That's for sure. The technology is there. I mean, you can resurrect the Concorde. It was designed in the 1960s, but consumed a lot of fuel, makes a lot of noise. The price of the tickets required and the load factor required for a Concorde to be profitable, it's a bit unrealistic. It's very interesting going westbound because you can, let's say the flight used to leave here at 11 a.m., you'd arrive at 9, you can spend all day. But going eastbound, you couldn't really find the right timing. So we had a lot of customers, when I look back and I study how the traffic patterns worked at Air France, a lot of people, they would fly here at 11, they'd have a breakfast meeting, a lunch meeting, meetings all afternoon, and take an evening flight overnight, a standard flight, like a subsonic airplane, and arrive here in the morning. So less than 24 hours, 3 meetings, very efficient. Whereas the Concorde going eastbound, they wouldn't be able to gain anything. You don't want to land here at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no advantage. So to get back to your question, do we see for our airline, interesting, is it something that I believe is going to come about in the short term? Probably not. But midterm, I think there's a possibility.
Okay, a couple of rapid fire questions. Favorite city in the world?
Tokyo.
Favorite city in Europe?
I would say Paris.
North America?
I would say Toronto.
Hotel. I'm not saying a hotel group. I'll come back to that. But if you think about just one hotel that you want to check into in a city you get excited about, thinking, actually, no matter how many times I've gone, this is Ben Smith's hotel.
Oh, that's not so easy. I think it depends. There's city hotels, there's resort hotels. To me, it's also the food is a big part of it. So it's not just the hotel, it's what's surrounding. But I like all the Amans from a chain perspective. As an individual hotel, I have a lot of nostalgia around hotels that I discovered when I was younger.
It may not be so great anymore, but...
Yeah, well, you have the Oriental in Bangkok, which is now part of the Mandarin Oriental chain. But, in the 90s, for me, it was one of the first luxury hotels I stayed at. So there's a lot of, the first Aman I stayed at was the Aman Puri, which, there's so many others now in cities. The first luxury hotel I stayed at in Paris was the Ritz, and now you've got 11 other palaces, which are all fantastic. In New York, the first luxury hotel I stayed at was the St. Regis, which is, now there are others. And if I think back to Miami, there's no real luxury hotel that I love today. I stayed at the Raleigh when it was independent, and we'll see how it turns out after the renovation. But Miami is a completely different city. I mean, if you ask me what's my second favorite North American city, it would be Miami.
Retailer you most admire?
Retailer. I like Brunello Cucinelli. I think it's an independent brand. It's amazing what they've done. They don't make any business suits. Well, I guess they...
I'm sure you could ask nicely.
You could ask. But I find that, every time I'm in one of their boutiques, and I've been to Solomeo before, it's impressive.
Favorite decade? If you look back, what was the moment in time for you? You thought, okay, it was here to manage people. It was a time of different aspiration.
Well, for someone from my generation, I think we're pretty close in age. I wouldn't say favorite decade. I'd say 85 to 95 was my favorite time.
I would agree. Media brand of choice. What are you reading first thing when you're getting up in the morning? Is it Flight Global? Is it Wall Street Journal? Is it Les Echos? What's your source or sources? And of course, you've got lots of other people around you to look at the media for you too.
Number one source, and I guess I'll be giving him some free advertising here, is Skift. I think for our industry, they're fantastic. I scan a whole bunch of other media. Our team takes all the clippings, of what's happening with KLM, Air France, and Transavia. So we get a quick summary that's sent to me, at 7:30 in the morning. So I have that, which I read really quickly.
Favorite aircraft?
Favorite
aircraft. You walk through that door, you think this is still, it's solid, it's what I like, it delivers what I need.
That's flying today?
We could go down memory lane and also what's flying today as well.
I would say 2. There aren't enough 747-8s. I love that airplane. Nostalgia.
I said I flew it the other day on your competitor. It's still great to fly up on the nose of that plane. It's fantastic.
Well, it's just, for many years, it was the only airplane that could fly more than 11 hours on a trip. So, they were all over the world. It's a beautiful airplane. You go to Heathrow, you go to JFK, you even go to Tokyo, Narita, and you would see 50, 60 of these airplanes. And as a young kid who's fascinated by aviation and passionate, it was a dream. So there's lots of great memories. And I still think it's a fantastic airplane. I love the 777-300ER. It's not anything wow special from the outside, but once you're sitting inside it and you understand the economics of the airplane, the size is perfect for our airline. The engines are, they're overpowered for a size of plane of its size. Those are the ones.
Do you have a favorite restaurant?
Favorite restaurant?
You love your food, as we know, so.
Well, here in Paris? Or
Anywhere. Well, we have Paris restaurant, but also, when you're in Tokyo, when you're in Sydney.
In Paris, it's Pavillon by Yannick. I don't know. We go there often. It's very close to our office, and he's fantastic.
Just before we go, this is a tricky one, but holiday destination, more south of France. You mentioned Amman's.
Holiday, number one for me is Miami. And the reason for Miami, it's got a nice buzz, and I have a lot of friends who live there. A lot of Canadians during COVID moved to Miami. The Miami beach area or south of 5th, it's very small. You can walk around. It's very unusual. You feel very safe. And it's right on the ocean. They got great restaurants. So for me, if I had to go somewhere for the weekend, I had to pick one spot where there'd be no hesitation. It'd be going to Miami. And we have a nonstop flight with La Première.
Double daily or once a day?
We have a double daily flight, and it's absolutely booming. So it's a destination where we really need some more capacity. So we have to decide, okay, we're going to open a new route, or we're going to stick the next airplane on Miami.
Ben Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My thanks to Tyler Brûlé and to Ben Smith, CEO of Air France-KLM. And that's all for this special New Year's Day edition of The Briefing. The programme was produced by Tom Webb, our researcher was Joanna Moser, and our studio manager was Christy O'Grady. The Briefing returns at the same time tomorrow, 1300 CET, noon here in London. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye. Thanks for listening, and a very Happy New Year.